To start this of the Licensing Review Committee, and first order of business is approval of two sets of minutes, one from March 25th, 2015, and one from March 26th, 2015. Any comments, questions, corrections, edits? Patty?
I have 5 corrections to each set of minutes, I apologize. On page 1, under section 3, the second sentence, after discuss should be the word is here to discuss. What the Licensing Review Committee is here to discuss is the draft, or are the draft. Should be are. On page 2, second full paragraph, third line from the bottom. Sure. She doesn't believe that the dosage should be permit dependent. Take out not.
Okay.
Page 4, first full paragraph, fourth line from the bottom, should say, the committee to look at Mr. Tebow's, take out his. He asked the committee to look at Mr. Tebow's record, it should read. See that? On page 7, first full paragraph, Cheryl, it should read, Cheryl, on the first sentence, Cheryl Snyder, a resident of White Place in Brookline, said, take out was. And that's all I have by way of corrections.
That's a lot. That's some close reading. Thank you.
Did you have some on the other one, too?
I do. Should I go through them now?
Yes, please.
Okay. March 26th minutes. Page 2. Bottom of the page, 1, 2, 3. Fifth line from the bottom. It should say the dose would be, not the does would be.
That's the one you were looking for.
That's the one I
yeah.
was looking for.
Yeah, the does. Got it.
On page 7, the first line of the first full paragraph, it should say, Co-Chair Goldstein observed that the concerns last night were of people who want to go be on the show. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the fifth line down in that same paragraph, it should say holders, and she doesn't know to what extent.
I'm sorry, where?
To what extent? Fifth line.
Same paragraph.
Same paragraph. I was just having trouble finding it.
Second
Doesn't
full,
know, okay, I got it now.
second full paragraph on the same page, page 7, third line from the bottom. It should say regulating it, comma. The DPH is regulating it. Page 8, first full paragraph. The middle of that paragraph where it says he believes, it should say he believes that both at the renewal and application. Take out that. Second full paragraph, third sentence beginning Mr. Hanley. Mr. Hanley asked how static is this, comma, how often do, it should say instead of to. And that's all I have.
Good. Anything else? All right, I move that we approve both the minutes of March 25th, 2015, that was our public hearing, and March 26th, 2015, that was the morning hearing the following. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstaining? Thank you. Next on our agenda is our discussion and possible vote on the proposed conditions. Town council has made some revisions based on our previous discussion. Patty, would you walk us through the changes, please?
Yeah, so you actually have 2 drafts in your materials. Please look at the draft dated 4/7. I removed it. Oh, okay, thank you. So what happened after our last meeting, as we discussed, was Alan and Co-Chair DeWitt met and discussed the concerns that we all talked about regarding dosage and labeling and packaging. And together they worked out some proposed language that is now under public health specific requirements on page 3, section 17, 18, 19, and 20. So perhaps Dr. Balsam could come and present on those, but I also just want to flag a couple of minor changes. In section 8 on page 2, I took out the specificity regarding the date of the plan because there already has been one change to the plan. It could continue to change. So rather than be specific and have to consider changing the conditions before the Board of Selectmen, we could just generally reference the transportation plan. And then the plan did change to delete a 9-month monitoring. It's now 3 and 15 months after opening of business instead of from the certificate of occupancy. Netta had pointed out that they could be opening sometime after the certificate of occupancy, so that would make more sense as now formulated. And I believe those are the main changes, except under community relations specific requirements on page 6. This language reflects our discussion at the last meeting that there would be notice to town meeting members also, who can get the word out to their constituents about community meetings.
I'm sorry. Is it implied that email is an acceptable way of notification, or should we be specific about that?
Let's see. Promptly notified. Doesn't specify how, so it is flexible as written.
Okay.
I still have a question regarding section 33, which we haven't discussed to date, and that's something that could be for discussion here, or it could be for discussion by the Board of Selectmen when this goes to the Board of Selectmen, and that has to do with whether we want earlier reporting of visit statistics and so forth to sort of monitor the level of the business. And further below, under annual reporting, sections 6 through 8, I flagged just to note, because Mr. Hanley had mentioned at the last meeting that there should be reporting to the Board of Selectmen regarding the traffic and so forth, monitoring under the transportation plan. I believe this language covers that already, so I just wanted to point that out. And then I added current list of products sold under annual reporting pursuant to our last discussions, and that's basically an overview. I'm sure Dr. Balsam could explain further the changes under public health related requirements.
Good. Dr. Balsam.
Good morning, Alan Balsam, Public Health and Human Services. So Betsy and I listened to your comments at the last meeting and went back and came up with public health specific requirements for labeling and packaging and dosing. They're quite comprehensive. They're based on the DPH requirements. There are a few additions to what DPH is requiring, the first of which is requiring the strain on the package of the raw flour material. That's something that Netta may have planned on doing anyway, I'm not sure. The most important part of the exercise was requiring a patient handbook and requiring that I review the patient handbook, and I did get a draft of the patient handbook here, and it looks good. It's still a work in progress. We also had a number of requirements related to marijuana-infused products, which you can see here, including the size of the dose of active cannabinoids as measured in milligrams. And the other thing that we required was, originally when Betsy and I asked Netta to put the packaging size, we required it in both grams or milligrams, really, because it's grams is the better measure, or ounces. And it turns out that they're unable to do both. Netta's software does not allow them to do both, and in fact doesn't allow them to do ounces, which I think is more important. People have a limit on the number of ounces that they can get in the course of 60 days, so that's what we really want. I understand they have petitioned or asked their software provider to do ounces, and if this software provider wants to go national, that's what they're going to need to do is ounces. So I've been told that that's going to happen. But what Betsy and I decided to do is that if they couldn't do both, that we would require in the handbook that there be a simple-to-use conversion table that patients could look at to convert from ounces to grams or milligrams, but I suspect it'll be grams. So we were very comfortable with that. We did have a couple of additions based on the delay of 2 hours. We wanted that in bold print. So I don't think there's anything strange or unusual in these requirements, except for the patient handbook that I have to review and approve, which has, you know, there's a limit to how much people can absorb on labels. I think when Betsy pulled out the the package insert for her medication, you could see nobody reads that stuff. We want something that's brief enough that people will actually read it, but also gives the information. One thing I require of my students when they is to do a review of a nutrition label, because I teach food and nutrition, and they have to go through the nutrition label and identify what each part of that label is. And I've asked Netta to do the same thing for their label, to have a copy of their label with an explanation of what each part of that label means, so that people can actually benefit from the label instead of being mixed up by it. I have seen a prototype of their label. I think it looks very good, and with the explanation, it'll be even better. So I think those are the main things I wanted to say, but of course I can answer questions as appropriate.
Questions for Dr. Balsam or for Patty Correa? So on the issue of disclosing on the label the number of ounces, is it, I'm interested that the software program that the proposed applicant has doesn't allow that right now. But to your knowledge, is that something that's going to be easily accomplished even though the software doesn't
I believe so. I think that the software company is going to respond and make that available, make that
Seems to me it's
change.
a pretty simple thing and a pretty basic requirement here, and
Yeah.
if it's not being done already everywhere, it should be done everywhere. If
I think
we're putting
it's fair to
limits on
say,
ounces, then
yeah, I
we-
think it's fair to say that most people in America don't know what a milligram or a gram is in relationship to an ounce, but they do know what an ounce is. Which is not to say that people shouldn't know what that is.
Do you think we need to be even more specific that when it comes to the infused products or the processed products, we're really talking about not the ounces of the actual material, but the ounces of
There
base
it's a
material?
different thing. There you don't want ounces. What you want, because there's such small amounts,
Yeah.
you probably want them in percentages.
But don't you want somebody looking at that package to know how many ounces of raw material that represents?
No, because I want to know how many grams or milligrams of the active ingredient it represents. And actually, though, they would need to know how many ounces went into it. So there would be, I don't know if it would be on the package. That's a good question.
Well,
I'd have to
well,
ask.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
Yep.
if we're limiting people to a certain
To-
number
to
of
10,
ounces
yep.
per period, 10 ounces,
How much is in the infused product?
much is
So
in
how
the
much of their allotment they're getting. That may be in this, but I'm not positive, and that's a very good question, and I think we should direct that at the folks from NETA.
yeah, Norton, you want to address that point? Or anybody from your team?
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, Amanda Rossitano from NETA. Yeah, as a matter of fact, when it comes to MIPS, both of those items will be on the label and are actually required
Tell me
here.
MIPS.
I'm sorry, marijuana-infused products.
Okay.
So as the requirements are listed, it says the size of the dose of active cannabinoids as measured in milligrams, and then also the quantity of usable marijuana contained within the product as measured in ounces. So that is C and D of Section 18. So both of those numbers will be on the marijuana-infused.
Does
product.
everybody agree that that phrase, the quantity of usable marijuana contained in the package, is describing the point that I made, that we're talking about the raw material that went into the used product, the infused product. It's not.
Could say, it could say how you just said it, and we could change the language.
You know, could
to
put
refer to-
maybe parenthetically or something like that, we could say.
The quantity of,
That's the actual DPH
Is that that's their-
term
that's their-
that they use.
All right, if it's their term, I'll go
we
with
could,
it, but,
we could still modify it as long as it's consistent, if we chose to.
okay.
For-
Before we go off the labeling, I have a question about the affixing part. So, although all these things are certainly needed on the labeling, and I notice there's an obligation to affix it, what happens if there's an MIP that's smaller, you know, something that's quite small? How are you going to affix a label to that? And should we be careful to provide an alternative where, you know, literature is given along with the product, because it may be too small a product to affix a label that's going to contain all this? What's this? What, yeah, like a lozenge, like a baked good that may be this big, but you need to have, you know, this big a.
Sure. So the language regarding affixing the label, again, is DPH language. We are required to affix it to the actual products, and therefore the packaging that we're currently looking into, you know, that's one of the things we're looking for, is to make sure that we can actually affix the proper labels to those packages. So everything will be in a package sized appropriately to be able to affix a label to each individual product.
Patty, just under 18, you've got two section As. I just noticed.
Okay, thank you, I'll correct that.
Anything further? Committee members? Do you want to just address the changes generally? Anything in our most recent draft that you'd like to comment on?
I think we're generally amenable to the proposed conditions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Balsam, did Selectman DeWitt also discuss with you again the subject of appointment only for first visits to the dispensary?
We chatted about it in general, and I did make a suggestion to folks from NETA that for the initial visit, that it should be by appointment only, and that they should seriously consider that. The truth of the matter is that the first appointment's going to be a little lengthier because there has to be a formal intake. So I think they are considering it, and I haven't heard back from them, and whether or not we make it a condition might be best left to the Board of Selectmen.
You want to comment on that aspect of it, too? I should, you can come forward, but to give you some more context for answering the question, my understanding is that, you know, a lot of the other dispensaries that are going to be licensed are even more delayed than was previously thought, and the demand on this location, we may be one of the first, and we may have an even greater traffic flow here, at least initially, than expected.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So Arnon Vered, I'm the executive director of NETA. Absolutely. This is an operational issue that we're going to deal with in a variety of ways. So first, we're probably going to open before we open. So have open houses, have all of our staff there to give advice to people, do some of the patient intake either online or at the store or in other locations or even in Northampton. So there's a variety of ways to try to get that kind of first group of people and have them already processed, so to speak, before they actually come to the store. The key point, and this is based on what happened in other dispensaries all across the U.S., that when 80% of the people that come into the store come in, have a few questions, receive the product, and go out, and there's no need for an appointment. And we're always going to have appointments for people who want to have a longer form discussion. We'll want to see exactly what the situation is, literally as we're about to open, based on patient demand and what we're seeing in some of our open houses before. And based on that, it's going to be, I think, up to NETA to make operational decisions about what to do in terms of traffic mitigation, what we do in the parking lot, what messages do we send, all of those elements. So our overall goal is very simple, to make this a very smooth, few weeks as much as possible, and we take all the operational steps that we need to take in order to do that. So that's kind of thinking about it holistically.
Okay. Committee members, I mean, do we want to leave this to the Board of Selectmen to decide on this issue, or do we want to make a recommendation on it? Thank you, Anand.
That's fine with me.
Leave it as is, I think is what I'm hearing, and the board will evaluate whether they want to impose that restriction, at least temporarily. Okay, I'm comfortable with that. Okay.
Where are we on hours? Is that,
So that will be in the application, it is in the application form, and what NETA will do is say their proposed hours and days, and then the selectmen will decide
Okay.
what they approve. In your packet, you have a very preliminary draft of a license, and you can see that it'll have the days and the
Yeah.
hours on that.
All right, I think it's last chance here, so I think we're fine.
Yeah, can I just raise one other issue that we discussed at the last meeting, which was concerns about financial transparency? So on Monday, Joe and I talked, and it seemed to make sense to both of us to, rather than include additional conditions on this question, include in the application form, a new draft of the application form is in your packets, asking for additional information at the outset regarding the sources of finances and related entities, and doing background checks of those individuals. When I put together the earlier draft, I, again, had based much of it on the DPH application. The questions that I've included are from the DPH application. I didn't include them not because they weren't relevant, because they are relevant, but just because I was trying to weigh how much information the selectmen would really want to sift through. But after our conversation, my conversation with Joe and our discussion last time, I have proposed adding those questions in the application form. And in terms of renewal, we'll see what DPH is asking for, and we may consider asking for similar information on future licenses.
I was going to discuss the application afterwards, and not that it's...
I just was explaining why there wasn't anything in the conditions on the financial transparency.
So, like I said, I think this is last chance here for changes. Otherwise, I think we're ready for a vote. Anybody assembled here have anything critical to say? It's not a public hearing, but since we've got a couple minutes, it's good. All right, we're going to make a motion then. And my motion is that we approve and recommend to the Board of Selectmen the conditions as outlined in the April 7, 2015 draft, with the minor edit that Associate Town Council Correa advised us of, and I don't think there's anything further, so moved. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Great, we've got them. It's not necessarily an agenda item, but we have... Is it new business? Is that what we're talking about? Okay. No, it's actually not quite new business, because we've talked about this before, but the application, the draft application is also before us, and ultimately, this will be a selectman decision too, but if everybody's had a chance to review it at this point and seen the edits on it, I don't think it warrants a lot of further discussion. I don't think we need a vote on it, but if you have any comments on it, now would be the time. Nope. Okay. Very good. So I don't think we need a motion on that one. Any other new business? Good. I don't think we need to schedule a next meeting either then. All right, and I'll add that, speaking for Selectman DeWitt, who unfortunately is at another meeting this morning, and myself, this is probably our last meeting as chairs or members of the Selectmen's Licensing Review Committee. It's been an honor and a privilege, and...
There are no other license circumstances to review and upgrade? We've done them all?
We've done them all, have we let, no, it is my hope that,
We started talking about Airbnb, but we didn't get very far. Airbnb.
Oh, yeah.
It's already been expressed, the next iteration of the Board of Selectmen with 2 new members on it will almost certainly continue this committee. You should not assume that your membership on this committee is over, but I can't tell you who the chair or chairs will be at this point, but they'll be convening soon, because there is lots of new business, there is lots of reason to continue the ongoing review of licensing requirements and procedures in the town. I think this was a great idea that Selectman DeWitt had to form this committee. I think we've really come up with some valuable things since its formation, so. You waved something at me a second ago, Patty, what was it?
Oh, that was
Goodbye.
Oh, it was a good
nothing substantive. I just wanted to make sure everyone saw in their packets the information from DPH that our NETA did receive its licenses regarding Northampton and Franklin.
Good. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.